Luxury is our birthright. Say that with me again. Black luxury is our birthright. Hey everyone, this is Soraya back with Purposeful Professional Media. Today I am excited to introduce our guest, Crystal de Cruz. In a world where Black women are often told to be humble and simmer down, Crystal has always stood in her greatness. Even when she didn't know how she'd get there, she knew luxury was her birthright. From her time working in the corporate gifting industry to her presence as the founder of Boxed in Black, a luxury gifting company featuring gifts from minority entrepreneurs, her vision has led her this far. I'm excited to talk with Crystal about her upbringing, her Cape Verdean heritage, her love for luxury, and her early lessons in entrepreneurship. Listen up for this fun, luxurious, and stylish audio. Let's jump into it. Hey everybody, this is Soraya from the Purposeful Professional, and I'm here with today's esteemed guest, Crystal de Cruz. Crystal is an excellent marketer, a brand curator, excellent entrepreneur. She runs a really, really great brand called Boxed in Black, one of my favorites for buying my board members gifts. You know, shameless plug. That's how I get my board members gifts. I'm really excited to have her on the podcast. I think she's such an inspiration, but she also stands for something that people don't necessarily think, two things that people don't necessarily think go together: Blackness and luxury. Today, we want to talk a little bit about her perspective, but also her love for all things luxury and what she's really trying to do in the space, and how she wants to make it more inclusive. Crystal, introduce yourself to the people on the podcast.
Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal de Cruz. I am the owner and the founder of Boxed in Black. We are a high-end curating service that we curate gift boxes that are assembled mainly majority items from Black and Brown owned brands. We do our best to really create a very chic and posh experience. Yeah, we're just getting started, launched at the end of last year, and have just been using this year to kind of recover from, or reflect on our first holiday season and get ourselves back and up and running again. So it's a pleasure to be here. So happy to be here and having this conversation with you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So one of the things that we're doing this season, we're doing a segment called Pop Purpose. And basically, we want to cover a pop culture topic or segment with a guest that really aligns with their experiences, their career, but also their interests. So immediately when I thought of you when I thought of the work that you do at Boxed in Black, I thought of the 15% pledge. And I thought of what the 15% pledge is trying to do in bringing more Black and Brown owned brands to the forefront by saying that 15% essentially of all shelf space should belong to these brands. There's so many different brands, from like feminine care, consumer packaged goods, all the way to like sauces and spices. I really do see the 15% pledge doing a lot to make sure that Black owned and Brown owned brands can actually have the representation that they need. So according to their website, the 15% pledge is a call to action for major retailers and corporations to join in creating sustainable and supportive ecosystems for Black-owned businesses to succeed. They work with companies to comprehensively reevaluate their organizational structures, ways of working, funding, and resourcing in order to implement and pursue greater meaningful change for Black businesses. So what I wanted to ask you is, since you are the Chief Executive Officer of Boxed in Black, I'd love to have an opening discussion about like the 15% pledge and its importance in the lives of Black consumers and also retail, just the retail industry in general for people of color. So my first question for you is, like, when you think of the 15% pledge, what really comes to mind for you?
So the 15% pledge has actually had a it was a big inspiration to me behind Boxed in Black. I had recently learned about their work. It was funny because I was actually, researching my competition at the time. I had seen like gifting companies showing up in this way, and I was very excited about it. I love the idea of curating things and putting them together. And so I followed my competition pretty closely, or potential competitors a lot, before, deciding whether to do this. And I knew that I wanted to put together a curated gifting service. I knew that I wanted to bring something different to the space, right? I didn't want to just copy what was being done out there or doing it in the same way. So one of the other gifting companies that I follow, it just happened to be around Black History Month, I think. And they had mentioned that, 15% of their brands that they work with were Black owned brands. And so when I initially heard that, I was like, well, 15%, I said, that's I guess that's a good starting number, but I work with, I'm a consumer, right? Like I follow, even prior to doing any of this, like I am a consumer. I love shopping, I love buying things. And I just knew from being on Instagram, being a creator on Instagram for well over 5 years, being, a user of Instagram for probably close to 15 years, right? I knew that there were more brands, right? I knew that there were some really, really nice brands out there. And so when I heard that 15% number, it just like sparked something inside of me. And I was like, well, I wonder if we could do a curated gifting service where we are not just promoting our 15% or just our Black owned brands during, February, right? That's what everybody does. And I thought, I was like 15, like, why that number, right? So I was like, well, what if we did like 100%, right? What if we did like 85%? And the reason that I didn't do 100%, I wanted it to be, I wanted to have, there were brands that I like as a consumer, like as a Black woman, like we don't necessarily just only buy Black owned brands. I think everybody knows that. And there were some brands that I wanted to hold space for them too, because they were just items that I really liked. And I was like, well, what if we did majority, Black owned and brown owns? That way we can bring, Latino owned companies into the space. We can bring Asian American owned companies into the space too. But I really did want to curate the whole company around Black owned brands, which is why I basically decided that it was called Blacks in Black. But getting back to your question, when I actually found out, I was doing research and digging, and I found out about the 15% pledge, and I said, oh, that's where that 15% number came from, right? And having that context was like, that was like the light bulb that went off. And I was like, okay, that's why, that number was used. So I think that the 15% pledge is an amazing initiative. I very much look up to the woman that runs that initiative. I think that they've done a lot of really, really important work. And the purpose behind it is to have these major retailers like the Targets, the Walmarts, the Macy's, the Nordstrom, like dedicate 15% of their shelf space to companies. So, I mean, to Black owned companies, which I think is amazing, right? I think as retailers, it is our responsibility to go beyond that, not just to check off a box, right? That's not the point of the initiative. The point of the initiative is to get these brands out there and not to limit them at 15%. So when I hear companies kind of using that 15% term, I challenge them to go beyond it. You know what I mean? I think it's amazing. It's very impactful, when Walmarts and Targets do it. However, they have the ability to go even further. And I think that it's a great initiative. Obviously it inspired my company. So they do grants, they do all kinds of things. And now that I'm like in the space, right, and I've made friends with some of these founders, I'm seeing that some of these founders that I'm friendly with are getting grants and they're getting awards. And so hats off to them. They started something that was not being done, and they've just opened up the doors. But it is on us as the retailers to use that as a starting point, right? And 15%, right? Like, yeah, 15% of it was started on the premise that 15% of the country is, Black Americans. But when you also factor in Asian Americans, Latino Americans, people who don't identify as Black but are still brown, that number, that 15% number actually needs to go up. So I would challenge the retailers to make sure that 15% is the benchmark. That's the starting point. And we really need to go beyond that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I feel like you said everything that needed to be said. I don't think there's even anything else that I need to add. The one thing that I want to add is I think like that begs the question of, is 50% enough? And that's one of the things I was going to lead to. And I think you agreed and aligned with me on that 15%, it's the start, it's the beginning, it's the flame, but it's not the fire. Like it's not exactly enough. And if you think of like, even if we account for the historical like elements involved in Black owned brands being destroyed, or even not even being destroyed in terms of like a lack of opportunity, but even destruction physically. There's another episode where me and a person I'm interviewing talk about like Black Wall Street and the different things that have happened to just African American and brown communities in the United States. when it comes to retail and commerce. So there's so much that has to be done. But I agree with you in that I actually love the 15% pledges Instagram. I think they're wonderful.
They are just so helpful, so impactful, right? They can't do all of it by themselves. There has to be some onus on, the retailers. And if you think about 15%, yes, why is the 15% of the population, it would be much higher, like if it weren't for systemic racism and, limited opportunities and trauma and stress that we face in our communities. You may even have people who are Black that don't identify as such because for whatever reason, right? So, I mean, to your point, 15%, I do feel like it needs to be on, the 15% pledge. They are doing their part. They have done their part. They have done more work than, they've made such an impact already and they continue to do the work, but it is not only their job. It is the job of us and the job of people who don't look like us, right? I wouldn't even say us, right? It is, I mean, I think as Black people, we are always the ones that have to educate people on these things. And we always have to show up in spaces and advocate for everybody, including ourselves, right? There's a lot of work to be done. And the Black and the companies that are doing this already, the organizations that are doing this already, they would be able to make so much more impact if more people would get on board and educate themselves too, not just it's not just our responsibility.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I 100% agree. So speaking about like what we can do, I have one question for you. Like, what do you hope your business, Box in Black, like, how do you hope that it will fit into the narrative of the 15% pledge? And like, what impact do you hope to have in this space of moving towards, championing these minority brands?
My goal with Boxed in Black is obviously it is my venture. I obviously want to share it with the world. I think that right now, we just, a lot of people don't know about us. They don't know about our cause. They don't know about our mission. They don't know who we are, and when people find us, they're like, oh my gosh, where have I been? Like, where have you been all my life, right? Like, I love this service. I love the packaging, right? My goal with Boxed in Black is, I obviously want to take it to a level where we are, competing, with some of these large, very well-known gifting companies. I want to be a leader. I want Boxed in Black to be a leader in this space. Also, my goal with Boxed in Black is not just, so for example, like I envision a platform where, you get a gift in the mail or you're shopping for a gift on our platform and you see that there is this brand, right? You this product and you order the product maybe for yourself, probably giving it as a gift, and then now you found out about this product that you may not know existed in the world, right? And now you are a consumer of that brand, right? You are going, if you need one bottle of whatever it is that's in there, one candle, then you can, obviously, we want you to support us again, right? But for self-use, we want you to be able to go and support those brands directly. So it is a gifting platform, yes, but we really want it to be like a platform of discovery. Also challenging the notion, because I feel like sometimes when I kind of announce, what I'm doing, or like, even so funny, even with chat GPT, when I use it, right, I mentioned, we work with, Black owned brands. And then it turns into this conversation where the language that comes back to me is very like small, right? It's like, hey, we work with these very small brands. Like we work with these very, instead of calling them brands, they'll say, entrepreneurs from marginalized backgrounds. And I have to like really step back and I'm like, look at how even with an automated language model, when you say that your emphasis is on spotlighting Black and brown browns, the conversation then becomes much smaller, right? The conversation then becomes, oh, these are, small batch, hand poured. And yes, we do have small batch, we do have hand poured. That idea that when we focus on brands from a certain demographic, that somehow we're kind of speaking at a lower scale, or somehow we're not scalable, or somehow the quality is compromised, or and it's just very the biases that exist against brands that are founded by people of color. It's appalling, really. And so that is why I try to go luxury, right? Luxury is very, very subjective, of course. There are some brands on there. Somebody might say, oh, that's not a luxury brand, that's a premium brand. Somebody might not even think it's premium, but I like to work with brands who, I like to present our brands as established brands. There's no skimping on quality. The presentation is beautiful, and we have, some of the best products. My goal is to make the best gifts, and it's not just a box that you buy as a novelty, a one off. Like, I want to develop relationships with our clients where they come back to us for everybody. They're going to gift these boxes to anybody that they want to impress, regardless of like their background. And with that being said, at the same time, the goal is when somebody does receive our gift, which is in most cases, a person of color, I want that item to resonate with that person. I want that item to feel useful to that person. I'm not going to give them some generic comb, a product that is not going to, work in their hair or just not going to match their skin tone. I want it to be a platform where not only are we featuring the brands, but the gifts that we give are going to be useful to a diverse audience. So that's kind of, where I'm going with Boxed in Black. I think it's really important to kind of, we have amazing products, we have amazing brands. When people assume otherwise, it is very disheartening. I will say that.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on like a lot of different things. Number one, the fact that luxury has been almost taken, like, or the luxury moniker has been taken from certain communities. Certain communities can't say luxury. You even put it in AI, and AI is telling you small brand, homemade, hand poured. It's almost like it's trying to, I guess, strategically lower the quality,
It
or
is, and I argue with ChatGPT. I really do. I say to it, why is it then when we were talking about brands and I didn't mention that they were black owned, you called them brands. But as soon as I said that we spotlight black and brown owned brands, then these brands are no longer founders, they're entrepreneurs. And at the end of the day, we're all entrepreneurs, but don't talk about us like we're amateurs, right? Like, that's the thing. And it's frustrating. And if AI is doing it, I mean, it's a computer. How mad can you get? But it's programmed a certain way because of the data that it's being fed. And maybe not intentionally, but it's a language model. It goes off of data that's already in the world. So it's funny how the conversations change a little bit and the words change a little bit based on like when I do reveal the fact that what our emphasis is. So it's interesting. It's sad and it's interesting at the same time.
I also find that very interesting, and I also find it interesting how you talked about Box in Black not just as a gifting company, but as a almost like de facto marketplace where you're helping other people to discover different brands. Just as a case study, I just want to let y'all know, Crystal actually is the board gifter for Identity, and I on our old Instagram deleted the old Instagram. On our old Instagram, I had a story up. One of my board members literally posted a story of receiving the gift. He was so happy, and he tagged every single brand. And what you're talking about, I've experienced. I've experienced them. I think it's like, I don't know if it's Nopalera soap. Everybody likes that. Like, I hear that one a lot, and like people actually started wanting to buy from the individual brands because they're like, hey, I got this soap, it was really great, or I loved the popcorn. Like, they loved like little things in the boxes, and they looked up the fact that he went and looked up and tagged every single brand on Instagram. Lets me know you're creating a platform for discovery, not just for shopping, but for discovery, and almost like an indirect marketplace. So there's this almost network effect that Box in Black has, where like if you join that, I mean, if I had my own brand, I want you to, promote my stuff, because I feel like, once people join that, it's this experience of, your brand reaching different people through a box of curated of other brands. And it's almost like this like unity, there's this unity, but also this cohesion. So I think that's very special. And that's why I hope to continue working with you on that front because I think also the client facing is also great. Because, yeah, like when you have board members, you want to surprise people. I didn't want to do the typical like custom ink. I might be young, but I'm like you. I have a taste for the finer things in life. And I've always had that. And we're going to get into like your background and whether you've always had that. And I wanted to have a gifting experience that was more than the like custom ink. Here's an identity t-shirt and a water bottle. Like I wanted more. And I think that's kind of what Box and Black did for me. It gave me an opportunity to kind of flex a bit and say, hey, this is my taste. This is how we roll. Not a water bottle and a t-shirt, but I actually do want you to receive something that speaks to how I see you, how I view you, which I see all my advisors as being esteemed people. So I want to esteem them through the gifts I give to them. So that's powerful because you're giving us Black folk the ability to like take luxury back and be unapologetic about the fact that we like nice things. And I think that's something that I reclaim for myself, and I want a lot of the listeners to reclaim. So,
Absolutely. I love that. I love that you got that. Like, I speak with potential clients all the time, and sometimes, I'll have somebody within the organization and they're so excited about my brand, but then as soon as they go to the decision maker's like, "Nah, we're gonna get water bottles instead." And I'm like, branded water bottles at that. And I'm like, okay, I understand that very old school mentality, but the question is at that point, like, does the gift become about the person receiving it, or does the gift become about your promoting your company? And obviously, business people are giving gifts for a reason, but there just needs to be some consideration for the person that's on the receiving end of that gift. And I feel like that is why companies like mine exist also. And then also selfishly, like we give gifts, it makes us feel good, right? There is somebody else that's benefiting, but we are like the secondary, benefactor. I don't know if that's the appropriate term to use, but we are also on the receiving end of that benefit. And we want to give gifts that one, make us feel good. Two, some of us like to, give gifts and it says something about maybe like our status, our taste. Like, let's not, that's very honest, that's very human. So I feel like that's what I wanna do with Box and Black. I want the gifter to feel like they, gave a quality gift. They didn't have to put too much thought into it. It didn't cause them a lot of stress. It didn't eat up a lot of their time unless they wanted it. Some people like enjoying and some people really enjoy picking out a gift. And I, want people who enjoy the process of gifting to gravitate towards us too. So I love that. And I love that that gentleman did that. So I'm so glad that the gifts were well received by your board.
yeah, I wish I had that old IG story. I might still have it, and I might be able to send
Oh,
it to
send
you.
it
I'm
to
not
me
sure
when
if
you
I
have
downloaded
it.
it, but they loved it, and I think it was this process of, like you said, the water bottle. I could have done that. I could have done the water bottle and the T-shirt, but I
And
figured
you're
when
gonna spend so much money on it.
yeah,
It's I
exactly.
mean, not that our gifts are cheap, right? But it's just like at that point when you're buying promotional items too, like some of the items in our boxes, you might as well just buy something that the receiver
Promotional
the
items are
receiver
not
sent them.
necessarily cheaper, too, and I think people have to recognize that, but also I think, like, there's this thing of, like, how you welcome someone. So you're probably familiar with, like, the 5 love languages. There's this love language of, like, how you receive get like, love, but then there's also how you give. I think there's kinda, like, 2 sides to it. I really am a gift giver, so I was attracted to Box and Black because I'm like, I take this thing serious. Like, if I'm welcoming somebody into a space, I want them to feel that way, and it was just a natural fit in that the DEI work that I do, we don't want to necessarily go to customing because we don't see that commitment. So I think there's also this like brand alignment that happened. And yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. So hopefully those who are listening, please, we're going to add the link to the show description box. Please support Boxed in Black. Please support the work that they're doing. I'm a repeat customer. I really love what they're doing. Please support it and make sure that you all, yeah, get those gifts that reflect the culture, that reflect diversity, that reflect all the values that we talk about on this podcast. All right, so that was a little plug. We want to get into this section called the people. So I actually like to talk not just about your career, but like who you are as a person. And I want to kind of start with like who you were as a teenager. I think if there's one time in your life when you're really into fashion and stuff, it has to be like your teenagehood. I think that's really when we start figuring out what our taste is, what our style is. So like who were you as a teenager? Did you always have like this eye for luxury and an entrepreneurial bent even back then?
So I have had an eye for nice things, luxury. whatever you want to call it, since I was a very, very young child, even going back before teenage years. If you would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was in kindergarten, I said, I want to be a princess. And that was it. Discussion closed, right? And everyone said, "You cannot be a princess. That is not a job. Like, you can't. It's not." And okay. So then I said, "I want to be a hula dancer." And everyone cracks up at that, but I don't know, like I've always been drawn to like arts and nice things and things that are presented a certain way. So then once I learned that, I probably wasn't going to become a hula dancer, I got a little bit older, right? I wanted to be a fashion designer. I also wanted to be an interior designer. I think I actually wanted to be an interior designer first, but I knew that I wanted to do something in the design world. I knew that for a fact. I knew that I wanted to make things look good. I knew that I wanted to present things in a certain way. My first job, I worked at Marshall's. That was my first retail job, not anything fancy, but I always think about that job because what I used to do is for Christmas, I used to give gifts to every single one of my aunts and uncles, like every single one. My first job, I gave a gift to everybody in my family. And I am Cape Verdean. We have big families. Like we have very big families. My father on his mother's side is one of 11, right? So here I am, the 16-year-old girl, and I was not 16, I was 14 actually, because I had to go and get a worker's permit. And I bought a gift for every single one of my aunts and uncles and my grandmothers and my mom. And I've always been like a scrappy worker. That is one thing. Like I grew up pretty poor, and if I wanted something, I found a way to get the money to get it, right? So here I am gifting. Then I started putting baskets together, right? I started doing all the things, and that's what I did as a child. That's what I did as a teenager. That was my first like inclination of like who I was. Then, of course, as you get older, society gets in your head. Oh, design jobs. No, that's a fantasy. That's not going to happen. Oh, the designers don't make any money. Oh, you got to go work for somebody for years before you do. And so, you kind of get away from. I've always been a dreamer, but I feel like I've definitely still allowed, you know, myself and outside forces to put a damper on my dreams, but I've always been very, very clear that I wanted to do something in the creative field. I said from a young age that I wanted to be rich. I used to tell my family that all the time, and they'd be like, "Nobody gets rich when they're young. Like, you have to save for years and years and years." And I was like, "Mm-mm, I don't want to do that. Nope." And I just always knew, like, I always knew I wanted to live a certain way. I knew that I wanted to be around nice things, right? I saw the people in my community taking these jobs. I'm from Providence, Rhode Island. I also grew up on the North Shore in Massachusetts, north of Boston. But I did see, like, when Cape Verdean people were working, we are hardworking people, like very strong work ethic. And a few of my family members, my mom included, worked in jewelry factories, right? A lot of my aunts worked in jewelry factories, or a few of my aunts. My grandmother retired from a jewelry factory, and it's like they're working for these jewelry factories, which looking back, they weren't really like luxury companies, but they tried to portray themselves as, you guys are working in these roles, but are your ideas being valued, right? Like, are your ideas being valued? No, your work is being valued, exploited probably. But I noticed at a young age that I didn't see anybody in those decision-making jobs or in those creative jobs, or like, we or even like marketing. We're not You guys are making the jewelry. They're not marketing the jewelry to you. So it's always been like this kind of idea that like, oh, you can use your hands to make this. You can work in our factories, but when it comes to like wearing our stuff, not for you. We pay you what? Who knows what my parents were making? Well, not my dad, but my mom. Who knows what she was making back in the day? No, like it's just kind of one of those things. Like it just felt like, we were watching but not allowed to participate. And as I got older, you start to realize like, how many trends and styles are kind of appropriated by these big luxury companies, right? But unless it's like Diddy or like high level celebrity, like you're not typically seeing us pictured as, the receivers of those gifts and the consumers of those brands. I mean, things have gotten more progressive, I feel like. There's been, you know, maybe the illusion of things have gotten better. I think some of it is very performative. I think there's a lot of tokenism in the luxury market. I kind of always struggled with that notion of like, hey, why is that for somebody else and not for me? Why is it not for us? Why do my family members feel like they can't go and get a job in certain places? Why do they feel like they have to, play small? I've never, I mean, for somebody to tell me that I don't belong somewhere, you're gonna have to work really hard to convince me. I've always just been like that, you know what I mean? And I also, I got an opportunity as a young kid to go to a private school that, it wasn't very diverse, unfortunately. It was a great school. I was treated very well there. I, met a lot of people. I was treated very well. But at the same time, like going to some of these kids' homes and these people just living in these homes and going about their everyday lives, seeing that contrast was kind of just like, hey, why not us? Especially when I'm going to school with these children, and a lot of them I'm outperforming them, not to toot my own horn, right? But like, why did they get to live like this and not us? Like, I knew it wasn't because of me. I knew it wasn't because of me. And I just decided, even though, we do dampen ourselves a little bit, dampen our ambitions, but I decided from a very young age that I was never going to count myself out and I wasn't going to let anybody do that. That's who I was as a teenager. I knew I liked nice things. I knew I wanted to be creative. I got in trouble, right? They used to say, like, when you're younger, the things that you get in trouble for, like, pay attention to those things, right? They tell you a lot about who you are. So when I was younger, right, we used to bring lunch to school every day. And like there were certain things that I did not like to eat, especially I would get tired of eating the same things all the time. So like if I had like a leftover granola bar, or if I had like a leftover yogurt, or if I had like candy from my Easter basket, I would bring that to school and I would try to like sell whatever I didn't eat to my classmates. And so my teachers obviously were a little bit concerned. So I remember they reached out to, it was either my mom or my grandmother. I think it was my grandmother at the time, because my grandmother did play a very large part in raising me. And she said, "You're selling your lunch." And I just was like, "What's the problem? I wasn't going to eat anyways." And she's like, "Crystal, you don't need to sell your lunch." And I said, "I know I don't have to sell my lunch. Like, I know I've never gone hungry. Like, that's the thing, right? My family does come from a working class family, but we've never gone hungry." And my grandmother was just like, she was so mortified that I would sell that. And I was like, "I know I didn't like, you know, I just wanted to have money and I knew I wasn't going to use it. So I'll might as well give it to somebody. These kids have money. Why not?" So it was just funny. I got in trouble for selling my lunch as a child. And that should have been a very strong cue or clue that I was, kind of meant to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of things that resonated with my own path. The first thing that you talked about that I want to kind of hop into real quick is you talked about this thing of kind of knowing that you were destined for more, or knowing that what you saw is not what you wanted. And I too come from a immigrant family background, and a lot of it is drilled into you of like, work hard, go to school, do this, do that. For a lot of us, the
Which we
blueprint.
did, by the way, which I did. I did that.
Absolutely. I did that too. But the thing about it is, like you identified, that's not enough, And I think I also do have flashbacks of seeing family members work so hard and retire and have a pension and have all of that, but not have what they could have had. You talked about ideas being valued. You talked about, people not being able to convince you that you're less than. And I think that when we think of like the psychology of entrepreneurs, specifically those from minority backgrounds, it does take guts. It takes guts to say, I'm not going to accept what I've seen work. There are people in my family who have been able to buy houses and have been able to build some semblance of wealth through direct jobs, through working, through saving, through those sort of measures. But I decided I wanted to, like you, take it to another level. I'm very similar in that I've always said I'm a multimillionaire. I've always told myself that. And I don't know if that's what you tell yourself as well. You said you tell yourself that you're rich. Some people put the, I mean, like manifestation, some people literally put the net worth, they have it on their phone, they have their projected net worth, on their computer, whatever. And I believe we have to visualize who we want to be before it even happens. So I identify with you in that I'm always thinking outside of what I've been shown. And I'm realizing that we can have more. When you talked about like being in the class with students who, number one, like were racially different, but number two, you outperformed them, that shows me that you recognize from an early age, I'm not less than because I am Black or of Cape Verdean descent or et cetera. Like I'm not less than. And I think that's something that I think, like I said, when I think of the psychology of entrepreneurship, specifically those from minority backgrounds, we have to get over this feeling of feeling less than to believe that we can participate in. You named some great spaces that, while very great and while Black, and minority consumers are abundant, there are very few interior designers of color, for example, or fashion designers of color that play at high levels. It's sad because we love these spaces and we want to be in these spaces, but sometimes they're denied to us. They're denied to us just off of the basis of what we look like. So I'm grateful that you went through the world understanding I am more, I'm destined for more, and I shouldn't allow what people tell me or what the society labels me as to prevent me from doing that. And I think that's a good segue into why you're into the luxury space too, because you want to elevate. I don't know if you see that. Do you see that connection of like wanting to elevate how we see ourselves?
Just going back just a second, I have to also give credit to my family. Like, my family was very much like not trying to knock me off my high horse, not at all. Like, my family is amazing. I was raised very well. I was raised to a, my parents told me they loved me every single day, right? My dad, for a Cape Verdean dad, he's just so stern. Like, he's stern and he's serious, but and sometimes I look back and I'm like, "Is that you? Was that you back then?" Like, he was just very, very, very affectionate and very loving. My dad, I feel like, was a dreamer as well, but he was always like like, he was a workhorse. Like, he liked to work, he was very practical, and I did inherit a lot of those qualities too. The first 10 years of my career, I worked in a corporate job. I made really good money working in tech. So I definitely have that practical streak too, because, my family made me realize, yeah, you are special, but you also need to make sure that you're, going to school and working hard and things like that. So it wasn't like I was just put on some pedestal and like, slept on 100 mattresses. Like, my family was like, no, you got to work. Like, yeah, you're beautiful. Yeah, you're smart, but girl, nobody's coming to save you. So I really do want to thank my family for giving me they instilled so much confidence in me, but they also made me shaped me into a responsible human being. So it was very much, they had a very, very big part of that. And I'm so thankful because a lot of times when you're working class too, you don't have the time for the affection. You don't have the time. You have other stressors. And I just want to say thank you to my family for putting the realities aside and just really instilling. My dad was a dreamer. He didn't really act on that, but I used to sing when I was little, and he used to be like, "Ooh, you're gonna be on TV one day. You're gonna do this." But then as you get older, right, reality starts to set in, and it's like, "Well, you should go to school." So, very grateful to my family. Honestly, they couldn't have made it possible. Honestly.
That's definitely amazing. And that also is a really, really great segue into our career section, our career question. So my question for you, you talked a lot about like having a vision from a young age. You talked a lot about being a dreamer, being determined, but also having a community around you. I'm curious of how you harness this vision into action to build Block Boxed in Black and to package these luxury goods for consumers. Were there any challenges also that you faced in the process of manifesting, the vision and bringing it to life?
So, I actually went to school for fashion merchandising. To the chagrin of everybody around me. Like I said, my family was very, very supportive. They didn't really see, like, my dad used to be like, I don't know how you're gonna get a job, but you know what? I'm still gonna pay for you to go to school and you study what you wanna study, right?" I had friends who would be like, "Your dad lets you major in fashion?" And I'm just like, "My dad would not tell me what to major in." And I feel like that was a privilege, right? I'm very privileged in that respect because I know that a lot of other, Cape Verdean, a lot of other African people, they don't get that privilege. Their families do tell them with good reason, like very well intentioned, they want the absolute best for them. But I do feel like I wasn't gonna listen to somebody telling me what I had to major in, and my family wasn't that much of, like, a stickler for that, so I went to school for fashion merchandising. Again, I still had that very creative drive, right? I was always a dreamer, thought very big. I wanted to move to New York City. I interviewed with the Fader magazine, bombed the interview, cried my eyes out on the way home because, I applied for I wanted to be a stylist, right? I didn't realize that a fashion editor actually had to write. I'm a great writer, but I went there and I wanted to talk about the artsy stuff, and they're like, "Well, we want somebody who can really write." And I'm like, I didn't know that. I would have given you writing samples. So, I've been knowing that I wanted to work in the industry for a really long time. Went to school, graduated in 2009. Terrible time to graduate from college, right? That was like after the housing crisis and the big recession and everything, right? It was really hard to get a job. And I found that I was being pushed into retail, right? And at first I thought like retail, okay, this is my even though I had worked retail, but I said, "Hey, I went to college, like maybe if I get in the door, they'll promote me to corporate." Did not happen, right? I wanted to be a buyer, right? I applied to buyer program from TJX, didn't get it. Cried my eyes out, right? So I kind of settled for a retail position and then I was working in it. I got really discouraged. This opportunity came up and it was a gift card position. And I was like struggling working retail. My car was like breaking down every other day. I literally didn't even have money for Panera. So I was just like, I don't care. I need to make money. Like, I'm going to go take a boring job. I don't care. We'll see what happens. So I ended up taking a job with CVS. I'm just like throwing everybody's name out there in their corporate offices, right? And I did ran their corporate gift card program. It was a good job. It was pretty easy. Like I did well, was respected there. It was a temp job. The woman who had the position ended up coming back. And then, I ended up getting an opportunity to work still in gift cards, but on the West Coast for a tech company. They started as a startup, but then they quickly scaled. I just was an account manager for 10 years with them. And I was managing loyalty programs, basically, overseeing the delivery of physical gift cards and the delivery of e-gift cards. And I just got to a point where the money was good, right? I was working remotely. I was able to move back from the West Coast, buy my house here, had my two children, I bought my beautiful SUV. I was like, "Okay, this is fine. I can coast like this. Like, I have everything I need." I, you know, but, after I had my second child, going back to work was really, really hard for me. I felt so much anxiety around it, and I just did not I just was not feeling prepared mentally, not feeling prepared physically. And, after I had my second child, I'm like, "Okay, what's next?" Right? I love my babies, but I know that for me to give them the life that I want to give them, I know that I have to, do something different, right? Either work a different job so I can be in a better headspace where I can, pour into my children, or just like me and their dad had separated. And I was like, I'm not giving up my aspirations. I still want to live like we have a two-income home. Like, I'm not we gotta figure something out, we gotta figure something else out. And, I ended up leaving my corporate job. My first few years as a full-time entrepreneur were a disaster. I'm not gonna even lie about that. And then, I was faced with the decision, do I go back to work? Because I was initially blogging and I was doing consulting and digital marketing, right? Because I did grow a blog. I don't talk about that as much, but I started a Cape Verdean food blog. I developed a following online. I local, people recognize me locally, right? There's not that many. I don't know if there's any Cape Verdean food bloggers besides me, but I really got into content marketing, learned digital marketing, a lot of those things. And I'm like, okay, I can either go back to a job, right? Just continue blogging on the side. I knew I didn't want to do that. And then I started seeing like gifting companies and I'm like, "Hey, I have a background in gifting. Why can't I do this?" Like, and it's so funny, before I started my blog, I toyed with the idea of like a subscription box, but I could not figure out how to get it. And the idea of asking for product for free freaked me out. Like, I was raised, you don't ask for money for anything. I remember one time I asked like one of my dad's friends for money for the ice cream truck. I got into so much trouble. Like, it was I was done. Like, Never do that again. So the thought of going to brands and asking them to send me free product, I was not willing to do that. So I just like threw that idea, tossed that idea, right? Thought it was a dumb idea. Then you have like, Curl Box that is just like she made a killing doing that. She figured it out. So she's so inspirational. But I knew that I did not feel comfortable doing that, right? And I probably should have, right? Like what is the big look, people do it all the time now. But I'm just saying, like, I was just like, I'm not doing that. So then I kind of, got rid of the idea. And then once my blog was, my blog, I still blog. But once I realized, like, this is not gonna, be able to pay all my bills anytime soon, I started Box and Black, which is probably not gonna pay my bills anytime soon because you learn it's so capital intensive, right? It costs a lot of money. I saw that I was like, hey, the box idea, it came back to me. Like, this is how it's done. This is how it can be done. I work with these brands and I buy wholesale and I sell at a markup. I had a few more tools to kind of put the idea together. And then from there, I listened to Nopalera, Sandra Velasquez. I saw her speak in person. I met with her briefly. I started listening to her. I met her in Puerto Rico. When I was on the plane back from Puerto Rico, I binged her podcast. Like I listened to every single episode. And the thing that she said was invest in a brand designer. That was the first recommendation that she did. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do what she told me to do because I was trying to like design my own box. Not happening. Trying to talk to suppliers overseas, not happening. So I got a brand designer, somebody who had actually reached out to me and she said, hey, do you need help with this project? And I was like, no, I got it. But then I was like, oh, she's really good. And I think I do need help with this. So then Bianca Mendez, she is an LA based designer. She's amazing, amazing, amazing. If you have a product, not a box company, but if you have a product, reach out to her. She's gonna hook you up with the packaging. She's awesome. She's amazing, amazing, amazing. But anyways, so then I decided to hire Bianca and we took it from there. She helped me design my website. She helped me design the packages. She put together my brand guidelines. I wanted to stay very much in the driver's seat also with the branding. And it was a very team thing. I sent her a printer's board with every single detail down to the thing. And she did so much better than I could have done, right? I'm glad I had the vision, but she really helped me execute. She's amazing. So definitely worth so much to me. And if it was not for her, honestly, I don't know, our packaging, our brand aesthetic, our things just would not be the same. So awesome. Get somebody to help you. Even if you're really good at something, even if you're really stylish, even if you're really awesome, you just need somebody to help you because two heads are just better than one. So that's how I started. And then I started reaching out to brands, developed relationships with brands, and just took it from there.
Yeah, that the whole story is that's a powerful story. I didn't even know that was the whole story. I think that that's a testament to your power of so many things happen. So many things happen even within those 10 years that you were working for that company. Like so many things happen, but one thing I always like to say to the people on this podcast, you talked about it. You said you got the idea for the subscription box almost like before, I guess, before the subscription box model blew up, which now it's very popular now because, as consumers, we're lazy. I don't want to always do all the shopping for myself. But the box idea came back to you. And one thing that I've been telling people a lot is that if you are supposed to be an entrepreneur, your ideas will come back to you. That has happened to me on multiple occasions. And I think that and I'm grateful that you finally can live in the manifestation or the existence of that idea because so many people have the idea come back to them almost like haunt them and they never do anything about it. So thank you for sharing your transition through the job that carried you through the first part of your career and also like what you want for the next part of your career. I think a lot of what you talked about was like what you wanted something different, you wanted something new, and that really pushed you into that direction, as well as the tip about the brand designer. That's some serious. I mean, I even need her contact information low key because some of the stuff we're trying to do around merchandise, that's not my lane. That's not my lane. But branding and aesthetic is so important, and sometimes we don't think it's as important as it really is. It is.
It is my favorite thing to work on. Like, even as my company grows, I really like CEO title, of course, like I'm putting it together. In my heart and in my core, I am a creative director. I really am. But I like I'm the type of person, if I sit there and try to make a website, oh, it's just not a good use of anybody's time. It's my website would have never been launched if I sat there trying to like figure out work with the suppliers, and I could have done it, right? But Bianca just she's just so much better at it than I am.
Yeah, but
She is.
the power of finding aligned collaborators, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's funny that you said that because I was having that same conversation with somebody the other day. I was like, she asked me, she was like, what's the ideal way you want to make money? Like, if you could make money any way in the world, like, how would you? And I said, as a creative director, I said the exact same thing. And not to say that I don't like implementation, but being a solo founder, you learn how hard the trenches can be and implementing everything can be, and you learn I'm good at implementation too, but I think my real strength is coming into impact spaces and envisioning things that aren't there, helping to bring the pieces together. So I think that's so powerful that you also see yourself as that. But now you have to be the CEO, creative director, but hopefully you'll get to a point where the wealth has built itself and you can step back and provide that creative direction.
We implement because we have to, right?
Yeah,
We have
we
to.
have
Who's
to.
gonna do it for
Hmm.
us, right?
We have to.
Who that's not my default. And I'm a driven person. I will get up, I will get something going, I will take the first step. But then when it comes to like following through with stuff, sometimes I need somebody to come in and like, you know, let's carry this forward. You know what I mean? And I accept that about myself, right? I am very scrappy. I tell my friends all the time, I'm not a doer. And they're like, "Yes, you are." But I don't that's not my I am, right? I get excited, I get amped up, I get motivated. Like that's my thing. That's when I get a new idea, like I sweat. Like, I sweat to the point where I just can't like, I get jittery, I have to go for a walk, I'm ready to go, right? And that's what fires me, those new ideas coming up, right? That's what gets me fired up. But then it's just like, okay, when it's time to, like we have all the clients and we have all the things and it's just ticking the boxes, guess what? I'm gonna start coming up with other ideas, and I'm okay with that. That is my default, right? I absolutely I'm a mover. I will move, but at the end of the day, I love being in this brainstorming visionary role. That's who I am.
Yeah, it's funny because I meet so many people. Usually, founders lean more towards one, but what I always say is, as a founder, you will be forced to face your shadow. So, if you are a visionary, you'll be forced to face your execution and maybe learn that you're not the best at execution or all forms of execution, as well as if you're an executor, you'll be forced to recognize, well, maybe I do need inspiration. Maybe I do get locked into what works and I don't necessarily see the possibilities. I'm very much like you in that I see the layers of the brand and I see, oh, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this or that. But I've also learned to give myself time. So, like, as that type of founder, I've learned to give myself time. Like, give yourself time to implement.
Right, and then give your vision, give it the respect. Give it the respect of following it through, right? Give it the respect. I've started so many projects. I really have. People are like, "How many times?" I can't even tell you how many times I changed my major in school. I didn't go into school saying that, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. I didn't, but I was like, "I wanna do fashion, and my school has it, and now I'm gonna do that," right? And nobody understood that, right? But at the same time, your ideas even like with my blog, I worked so hard on my blog and I got back into blogging consistently, but I had to put respect back on it because I changed a lot of people's, I got when I was writing my blog all the time, like I still do, I try to do a few times blog posts a month. I got letters from people who, they never knew their Cape Verdean side of their family. Their father was Cape Verdean, he passed away a long time ago. They lost track of their culture. They moved to the West Coast, nobody's Cape Verdean, and I would literally get these people would bring me to tears with the letters that they would write me and the emails that they would write me, and I'm like, I need to even with my blog, like, I believe in that work, there's a little bit of guilt that comes along with pivoting, but I need to allow myself to be human too and to pursue other things, but also, stick with things, and I can stick with things for a long time. I get excited, might jump ship for a little while, but I always come back to, the things that I'm working on, but anybody out there, give respect to your ideas, right? Sometimes when we quit, it's just like we haven't gone far enough with it. We were almost there, right? But don't quit before you're ready. It's hard to get excited about new ideas and pivot and wanting to stop, but it comes to a point where honor this part of yourself that really wants to be, honor the part of yourself that wants to start new ideas, but also honor that person that laid those bricks and set up that blog and built that community, because that person deserves her flowers too. So it's just this very, very tricky place that we find ourselves in as entrepreneurs, where we want to, we want to, optimize the things that we've worked on, and, see them through, and then also getting, still allowing ourselves to get, excited about the new things and the possibilities. It's really hard. It's probably the biggest thing that I struggle with.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. One of the things that I've had to learn is I've had to learn how to channel that into existing projects. So what I would say is before you start anything else, like do the little thing, like buy the domain name, okay, start the social media page, okay, but before you get the LLC, before you get the C corp, before you like ask yourself, is there anything I can do within my existing projects to bring new life to it? Because I'm also like you in that I love novelty, but I've also had to realize that I think being a visionary is so personal that it will get to a point where you want to fight for your vision and not fight for all the visions, but this one vision. Like I always say, I'm married to what I'm doing at this point. We're in a full blown marriage and I'm giving it at least 7 years, not the 7 year itch, but I'm giving it at least 4 years before I quit. I'm giving myself time, right? I'm giving myself time. I'm laying the bricks of the strategy. I'm learning the skills I need to take it to the next level. So I've had to learn to give myself time and to not quit when I don't see the results like so quickly, because the results don't come quickly for everyone, and that's the reality. But keep going. As long as you feel like inspired and you feel like you still believe in it, keep going. That's what I would tell anybody. If you still believe, keep going.
If you're ready to close something out and you know fully that you're ready to move on, and you don't want to, you're ready to close that out, that's fine. But don't let not something, I mean, we all have to cut our losses at some point, but don't, my blog, I was very worried, like, am I gonna give this up? Am I gonna get rid of it? And people would be like, "Why'd you quit your blog?" Like, I felt so much guilt, right? And I'm like, "I didn't quit. I just need to work on something else right now." It didn't pan out the way I did, but then I come back to my blog. My blog earnings have quadrupled, since, even taking a break, right? My domain is aging, you know what I mean? So I can get back into it, and blogging fortunately allows you to take some time off without doing major damage, right? I mean, there are things that I could have done to maintain it. I had to learn that lesson. But fortunately for me, I can go back to blogging. I may need to like revamp my email list, and that's fine. But in terms of Google, like recognizing my domain and stuff, I can start, blogging again and really make some progress. So when I'll have time to do that, I don't know, but I'm trying to do it like slowly but surely and be, consistent. But just know, like, don't, if you have moved on from something, and you're ready to start something else, and you're ready to put something to bed, that's fine. But really, like, do a gut check, like, why am I doing this? Is it because I had a goal and it didn't manifest and I quit and I started another company? Probably what I did a little bit, but I knew that, after working so hard on Box and Black, I was like, wow, I really miss blogging. And now when I do it, it's kind of like I'm doing it. I get to eat good food. I get to research this recipe that I want to make. It lights me up, and I had to take that pressure off of like watching the number of page views every day. So I have two businesses, right? But I love both of them. They're both very a big part of who I am. And the blog was kind of like the prelude, right? The intro into doing cultural work, to building businesses that had a cultural emphasis. So it's getting me to where I needed to be. So very grateful to my blog.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Crystal, today. I think this was great. I think this was amazing. The conversation did take its own form. I think you're a great storyteller. I'm inviting some of y'all back for a part two because I realize I have some guests that can talk. Y'all can
Yay.
really talk, express yourselves very well. So we will be in touch about a part two because I want to respect your time. But yeah, part two, we're going to get into some of this luxury stuff. We're going to get into some more of the stuff of building Boxed in Black. I think a lot of people want to know like how you're doing it, but also I want to also talk a little bit about your experience in the entrepreneurial ecosystem as well as a woman of color, like what that has been like. So I think that you have so much to share and so much to give. And I think this was an amazing conversation. This was an amazing conversation. I appreciate the vulnerability and I also appreciate the groundwork that you've laid. So yes, part two will be coming, y'all. We're going to get Crystal back on for a part two and we're going to continue building on her story. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Y'all, Crystal was so fun to talk to. From our excited and animated discussion on the 15% pledge, her love for fashion, her childhood dream to become a princess, and more, Crystal's episode helps us, especially those of us who are Black women listening to this, to claim the queen that lies within. Luxury can be by us and for us, and we can be successful through embracing our own instincts and choosing to become entrepreneurs, especially for a cultural and noble cause. Crystal, we support Boxed in Black, and we stand with you through your desire to impact our country and preserve the histories and lineages of minority communities through your gifting company. We wish you all the best with your endeavors and will continue to root for you through and through. Thank you for championing us and proving that Black is luxury. Boxed in Black, everyone, support the business. Anyway, this is Soraya, and we're out with the podcast for the people, your career, and the culture. Peace. We're out.